one of the most important aspects of understanding media bias is defining it. No definition is going to be perfect, but here's mine. So my idea of media bias is the way that particular media frames its narrative. So a lot of times when we're reading something or we're discussing something with an individual, we have to understand that they have lived different lives than we have, and everything that they've gone through, whether it's schooling, family, church, or lack of church, all contribute to that particular perspective. That's going to create a bias in the individual because they're going to view the things that they encounter through that particular filter. Reading articles from various media sources is exactly the same way. If you're reading something from perhaps CNN or MSNBC, it's going to carry a more left-leaning perspective than if you're reading something from Breitbart or Fox News. That's not to say that one side is inherently more honest than the other side. It's to say that when we're reading these articles, we have to filter out that particular perspective in order to get to the meat and potatoes of what they're trying to tell us. There are ways that we can see how a particular news source leans, and that's through various media bias charts, which we'll cover in just a second. I really want to impress upon the idea that I'm not saying one side's media is more honest than another. I believe that there's a possibility that over time things may shift from one to another in the propaganda, I suppose, that they put out. It's really important that we sample the news sources from each end of the spectrum, I suppose, the political spectrum, if we want to know what the full picture of a topic happens to be. Otherwise, we create what's called an echo chamber. And an echo chamber is when you are only discussing things with a person, or you're only reading things from a source that fits your own particular perspective. So that's like, somebody that is a Fox News watcher, only watching Fox News and not dabbling in any type of other news sources that differ from, Fox News's opinion, or only speaking about politics or what's happening in the world with their particular friend group that all agree with them and they never have the opposing viewpoints. What that does is it reinforces those views, it never challenges them, and it becomes the basis upon how that person in particular looks at things. There's never any type of challenge to those particular perspectives. So when they do finally talk to somebody that differs in opinion, what happens is that they just can't bring themselves to see that person's perspective. And that's not always a healthy way to be. That's not to say that you just should listen to people that you disagree with all the time. I'm just saying that it's important to at least give them the chance to present their perspective, look at it, and make your decisions from there. So now we're going to go into a media bias chart. The one that we're going to use is from Allsides. It's called, the actual website is allsides.com/media-bias/media-bias-chart. I'm going to link it in the description down below, so you can just click it if you'd like. The media bias chart is not always going to be 100% accurate. These are humans that are doing these particular polls and whatever they happen to do in order to determine the bias of these media sources. They do have a little blurb here that states, how does Allsides calculate media bias? So I'm going to just cover that paragraph real quick. It's a short paragraph. Our media bias ratings are based on multi-partisan scientific analysis. Our methodologies include blind surveys, editorial reviews, independent reviews, third-party data, and community feedback. It also says visit our media bias rating methodology page to learn more. So when you actually click on this link, make sure that you click that media bias rating methodology page if you want more information on how they determine, in which category to place certain news sources. So when we look at the news sources, we see that it is separated into 5 categories. You have center, and then as we move towards the right, you have a light colored R, which means that it leans right. You have a dark colored R next, which means that it is just completely right. And then to the left, you have the light colored L, which is lean left. And then you have the dark colored L, which means that it is a left-wing media source. So generally, the ones that are in the center are going to give you less of a spin, I suppose we should say. That's not to say that they never give you a spin, but it's going to be less likely to want to lead you more to the left or more to the right. And generally, those are the ones that have the most in the way of primary source documents that it links in the actual article. And we'll cover that in a future video where I discuss how to examine an article. So we notice that in the center, we have Associated Press, Axios, BBC, Christian Science Monitor, and then we go to NPR, and if you notice, the Wall Street Journal also, they have news only next to their particular, I guess logos is the right word. What that means is that they have different departments. So they have a news department, they have an opinion department, and they're separating them in order to let you know where the bias stands. So in a center perspective, NPR, just their news, Wall Street Journal, just their news are more center-based. If you look into the Wall Street Journal, on the light R, we see that it's Wall Street Journal opinion, and that means that when they're doing their opinion pieces, those are going to carry more in the way of a right side bias. That's really important to understand. Just like the Newsmax, news only is a light side R, but then when we actually get to the Newsmax opinion, it's just straight up dark R, okay? It allows us to know what to expect when we're reading these articles. Generally, it's going to be something along the lines of, a lot of times the left media likes to talk about the right to choose. The right media likes to talk about anti-abortion topics. The left likes to talk about gun control. The right likes to talk about generally not putting restrictions on the Second Amendment rights. Okay, so once we understand these things, whenever they come out with an article, it allows us to see, where they're going to lead us in their narrative. Let's talk about Donald Trump for a second, because obviously we've just come to basically the end of his administration, so he's a good example. If you're reading a left-leaning or a left-side publication, generally they're going to be more critical over what Donald Trump does. If you're reading a right-side publication, they're going to be more lauding in their coverage. They're going to be more accepting of the things that he does, and they're going to paint him in a more positive light. Now, mind you, these are not set in concrete. I have read articles from the right side that have just trashed Donald Trump, and I was going to say that I've read articles from the left side that have been positive about him, but I don't want to, I like to keep honest in my videos, so no, I have not read any of those. But I digress. Now that we know about media bias, what I'd like to ask you to do is, when you're reading your articles, notice the source of the article. Does it come from CNN? Does it come from Fox News? Know that they are going to have that bias, and see if you can separate the bias from the topic. See if you can see what happened in that particular article that you're reading and separate out the bits of opinion. It's a very good exercise, and it'll actually make you more knowledgeable about what you're talking about instead of, spouting out propaganda. Hopefully this made sense to you. If you like this type of content, please remember to hit the subscribe button and share. Our next fake news on trial video is going to be looking at 3 different news sources that I use. So I think I'm going to do one per video where I kind of do my top 3, starting with 3 and then going down to 1. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. La Pitch Canale, I will see you again.